morning. This is your girl Reese here with the Morning Max Show. And today I have a treat for you guys. Like I always say that I do, I always have a treat for you guys. But first, I want to start off with this wonderful t shirt that I have on. Can y'all see my t shirt? Can y'all see what it says? It says, "In the world of dum dums, be a smarty." Wonderful shirt. And I want to thank my boy Ronald the Truth Hunt uh, for making this t-shirt for me. You guys can get your shirts done and everything, logos, whatever you want. That's the man to go to. Ron, I'm giving you a shameless plug, and no, you didn't pay me for it, but I'm passing it on because I like my t-shirt. It's a good t-shirt. Give the t-shirt 2 thumbs up. But today, people, we got a special guest in the house. Yay! It is part two of what we couldn't get on Wednesday, and that is my good friend, my special guest, Professor Doctor Katina Thomas. When we come back from this quick commercial break, we'll be back in 1 minute. We will introduce Katina. Alrighty. Did you guys enjoy that commercial break? That was the commercial about Shades of Blue by AM Morning. It's a great book. It really is. Okay. Now, today we're going to introduce Miss Katina. Miss Thomas, are you ready?
I'm ready. Good morning. I'm glad everyone can hear me this morning. I hope we have zero static.
Yes. You sound crystal clear to
Great.
me.
Great.
Yes. So introduce yourself, please.
Well, my name is Katina Thomas, as you just said. I'd rather just be called Katina instead of Miss. If you're going to need to give me a prefix, then I ask that you call me Doctor, because calling me Miss just is a continuous remembrance that I'm still single. So until I can be called, until I can be called Mrs., I'll be called Doctor, or just take off the title.
Okay.
And I'm from Washington, D.C., like yourself. And I went to Andrew Jackson Middle School with you. And remember you being one of the sweetest girls that I knew. And so friendly, just as you are on your show. And so I'm glad to be here this morning and chime in and, talk about Black history. Anytime you want to talk about Black history, I'm your person to call, because I just enjoy it.
I do too. To us, Black history is 365 because we black, but
Absolutely.
we constantly making history. So to anybody that's
Absolutely.
black, it's all year long. It ain't
And it's
one
so
month.
much about the past to be proud of.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, that is the exact point that I'm trying to convey to today's youth, to so they can get an understanding of where they come from and how that they can flourish. I believe that if they knew just how much and just how important that they are, they wouldn't go out and hurt each other the way that we do. or feel like we not nothing. No, nobody should feel like they not nothing because we all are something and
Absolutely.
somebody. I wish that they would just. A lot of them do,
Yeah,
and I wish the rest of them would get on that same trip and aspire for more greatness because we are great. We are
absolutely.
great. We was great back then, and we're great now. See,
Absolutely.
and I'm glad you're on the show because I was talking to my niece and my girlfriends. She was like, "If you guys were so great, how come you didn't have this back then?" Aha, we did. We did have all this greatness right here on American soil in America. And she's trying to understand why did we let them take it from us? Because we were outnumbered. And she's understanding. She's like, I thought it was more you than it was them. It was more of them that was ready to fight us than it was more of us willing to fight. Because fear will paralyze you. And I said, if we had enough people that wasn't scared, and that's what it did, and it's still fear. And that's why a lot of stuff was taken from us, burned down. And I told them, I said, when they wanted to take something or bully us back then, they would burn it down right along with you in the house or you in the building. It didn't care. And they would have killed everything in their sight, women and children. And when I told this little girl this, her eyebrows went up like she doing a rock. She was like, what? Women and children. Yes, poo poo. That means if you were standing in their way, you get mowed down just like the rest of them. And she was like, wow. So I told her, I said, educate yourself. I said, everything is written. We just got to search for it. And I don't understand why we don't search more often. Do you, Katina, you're
Yeah.
professor of sociology. Why don't we search for the truth more often? Even with religion. What are your thoughts?
I don't think that. I think that there's a lot of searching going on. And one of the things about sociology is that we don't like to say that everybody this and nobody is that. We don't believe that there's any absolutes, so there's always a range of things happening at one time. And so I think that, we search for truth, but maybe not as much as we should, and maybe, not as deep as we should. And then it's like, my question is, what do you do once you know the truth? I think that's a huge issue. It's one thing just to have a head full of knowledge, but if you're not doing anything with it, it's almost useless. So I think that, we should not only search for information, but we should actually do something about it. And I don't fault young people because they're not the ones who are really in charge or responsible for teaching them. So I think that the older people, the teachers and parents and people in their family should definitely press upon young people the importance of learning these things early.
I agree. I agree. Just like there's systemic racism in Virginia, they're not allowed to teach about it. The governor even have a hotline to find out if you're teaching about it. Call in and snitch on your fellow
Hmm.
teacher if they're teaching about this. But aren't we the taxpayer? Isn't it
Hmm.
our tax dollar? And
Hmm.
aren't we supposed to say what we want our children to learn?
I agree, and I think that we definitely have that power. And I think that a lot of what Governor uh, Youngkin. That's Glenn Youngkin. Yeah, I think a lot of that is a bunch of people just talking crap and smack, because I can't literally understand. Oh, I couldn't imagine what he'd do if someone was in the classroom and they were teaching actual facts, historical facts to children. I mean, are they going to really run in there with some, fire sticks and burn down the teacher and things of that? I don't think that
No.
will happen. I don't think that can happen. And a lot of times those guys just try to talk real loud and talk real tough and think that's going to push us back and shut us up. And we shouldn't definitely allow that. you keep on talking, keep on teaching. As long as what you're teaching is accurate and can stand up to scrutiny, then I say teach it.
Well, he's taking it a step further. He's hitting the school district where it hurts, and that's in their pocket. He's threatening to take away government funding to any of these educational institutions that will teach systemic racism. And I was like, can he do that? This is government fund. I don't even know if that part is legal, but it's something that for the residents of Virginia to definitely look into. And as for the resident, I'm a resident of Maryland, and I know
Hmm.
you're a resident of DC.
Hmm.
We need to demand that they teach our children um, what the proper curriculum that they want that we want to see. Anytime, I'm not against the LGBTQ tranny uh, community at all. But when you put that before learning who you are as a person, like they took health out of school. That's where we learned about the difference between a boy and a girl. When I was going to school, it was a class
Hmm.
called health, and it taught
Hmm.
you how to take care of yourself, your
Hmm.
hygiene, and the relationship between a man and a woman, and how you produce babies. Well, they X that pretty much because everybody took it back in my time in the fifth grade.
Hmm.
So they took that curriculum out of school, but in place put in curriculum for the LGBTQ community, and you know, and that's fine if you want to introduce them to that, that quick. You're not even telling them about themselves, but let alone complicating things with other things. I think it's steps to building this tower, and to me, it looks like people cut out a lot of steps in the middle, and that's why the tower always end up collapsing in some form or fashion.
Hmm.
Um, but we're not going to get off track too much about that. we're talking. We're going to talk about summer of 1919. I do have a very interesting clip that I want to share with the people. Molly, can you cue the clip for us, please? And let's get our audience thoughts on that while I continue to share with everybody else.
Will you share Reese, make it public too? For some reason, I ain't seeing the comments popping up, but Slicky, E, Michelle, everybody in the comments saying hey to y'all.
Wow. Okay, let me go back and check that again.
And this is Crash Course Black American History. It's no secret that America's history regarding the treatment of Black Americans is filled with violence. And when we tell the story of Black history, one has to strike a balance. We have to be honest about the extent to which interpersonal and state sponsored violence has shaped so much of the Black experience in this country without falling into the trap of suggesting that Black American life is singularly defined by that violence. And it can be hard. A lot of the episodes that we've done have been talking about the horrific things that Black people have been subjected to. And that can be exhausting for me, for you, for all of us. But what we have to keep in mind, what I always try to remind myself, is that for so long, many of these stories about America just haven't been told at all. And so it is deeply important to tell a full and honest story of the violence this country has inflicted on Black Americans so that we can better understand why this country looks the way that it does today. Part of what I hope this series does is teach you all many of the things that I never learned in school, but things that I really wish that I had, like our topic today. In this episode, we'll focus on the heightened levels of violence that erupted into a series of riots across the nation in 1919, also known as the Red Summer. I want to reiterate that there will be mentions of physical violence in this episode. The US entry into World War I created two avenues of opportunities for Black Americans that hadn't been there before. Many working age white men were drafted as part of the war effort, which meant that there were many job vacancies that Black Americans could now take advantage of. The abundance of employment and housing opportunities became an additional source of motivation for Black folks looking to escape the violence and economic despair of the South. The war also allowed many Black men to fight on behalf of their country. Fighting in wars to defend America remains a hotly debated subject within Black communities. Some see it as an opportunity for Black people to earn their stripes, so to speak, viewing military service as the ultimate show of patriotism and a means of showing this country that this is a place that belongs to them too. On the other side, there are those who have always had this idea of Black people fighting for America as absurd, posing the question, why risk your life to protect a country that won't protect you? An estimated 367,000 Black Americans enlisted or were drafted into service during World War I. But unfortunately, upon their return, that idea of obtaining respect in exchange for their military service didn't quite pan out the way that they'd hoped. In the crisis, the official magazine of the NAACP, Black sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois wrote in his article, Returning Soldiers, we returned, we returned from fighting, we returned fighting. He wrote this in May of 1919. Foreboding as it was, this column could not have predicted what would ensue in the coming months. From late May to December of 1919, approximately 25 race riots took place on American soil. Black people's participation in World War I and their sudden increased presence in northern cities were beginning to cause a lot of white people to panic. Many white soldiers returned home and were worried about the prospect of financial insecurity. They came back to find out that Black people had filled many of the jobs at their previous workplaces and had no intention of going anywhere anytime soon. By the end of 1919, approximately 1 million Black Americans had fled the South for northern cities. Between 1910 and 1920, the Black population in Chicago grew by 148%, and in Philadelphia by 500%. Things were changing, and not in a way that everyone liked. Many white people were beginning to panic, and a campaign of terror emerged from this panic, becoming an extension of the lynching epidemic in the South. But whether the violence was taking place in the North or in the South, the goal was always the same: to maintain white supremacy and white economic power. In many of these bouts of
Molly.
chaos that were emerging, many Black veterans were specifically targeted by white mobs and police.
Okay, I wanted to take a moment to pause the film right there. Katina, I wanted to get your thoughts on what you thought about what you just saw. That gives the premises of what took place in the summer of 1919. Katina?
Unmuted. Let me okay. I think I've been unmuted. Somebody unmuted me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I was going to say that I am very familiar with this history because, you know, I have to teach it sometimes, and one of the things that I think is very important that was pointed out in the film, well, two things. The thing is that it's not taught like it should be in schools, and it's a part of American history. And because it is a part of American history, is reason enough for it to be taught in schools. And that is one of those lessons that, although it points to systemic racism, it doesn't say systemic racism. So I would have to wonder, how would Youngkin go about punishing a school that actually told this whole story? Because whenever you're going to tell a story about World War I, you have to include these narratives as well. Otherwise, you omit discussion about millions of people, a whole ethnic group. Okay. And
Right.
so that cheats the students, in my opinion. And so just as the issue of it being taught on that front, that is something that is necessary, in order to give us a fuller understanding of what happened in this country, right? And
Right.
from a standpoint of content, and how he kind of wrapped it up at the end of the clip, I love the way that he said that that whether it was in the North or whether it was in the South, the main purpose for the terror was to maintain white supremacy and power. And power is so pivotal in being able to get the things that you want in society. You need to have some type of power.
It's always been that control, that higher anarchy thing. They wanted to rule. That's what the white supremacy do. It tells them that they are not only a stronger or a better breed of race, but they need to rule over all the other races.
Mhm.
Uh, it's a difference between having pride, and there's a difference between being a racist. When you have pride in yourself, I tell people that all of the time. You think that you're good, that you are worthy. For instance, an artist know their time, or a hairdresser or a barber, and they're going to charge accordingly. They know their wealth, they know their worth. But there's another thing to think that you are superior above everybody else, and everybody else is beneath you. And it's a whole political structural thing, to do with that, got to do with that too. But as you pointed out earlier, he did say as well as the North, as well as the South. And that is a big thing, because everybody used to think that it was only the white people that was in the South that had disdain for colored people. And that's not the truth. The white people in the North didn't like it either, because not only are you up there in the North with them, now you're doing what they're doing, and now you're taking their jobs. It's that fear, because they didn't know what the black person was capable of, and it was like, oh no, they might turn around and enslave us to put us in chains if we keep letting these black people rise to this. Ain't no telling what there might be. You're right. We built the pyramids. We did so much awesome stuff, but they would like to erase and take credit for. But I should have said that. Excuse me. Those are my personal views, and not the views of the Morning Mac Show. But I just wanted to put that out there.
Mhm.
Molly, can you continue with the rest of the clip? Y'all listen to the rest of this.
To maintain white supremacy and white economic power. In many of these bouts of chaos that were emerging, many Black veterans were specifically targeted by white mobs and police officers alike. They were seen by many white people as a threat to Jim Crow and the racial order of the day. Black soldiers had returned from the war with the sense that they deserved more from this country that they had just risked their lives for. In Texas, a federal agent reported, quote, "One of the principal elements causing concern is the returned Negro soldier, who is not readily fitting back into his prior status of pre-war times." In July of 1919, in Washington, D.C., a white woman reported being accosted by a young black man. A suspect was quickly arrested, but he was soon released from custody. After his release, the press started fanning the flames of the incident. Mobs began to assemble, and a riot ensued. More than 150 residents were either murdered or injured. The poet, activist, and NAACP Field Secretary James Weldon Johnson, who coined the term Red Summer in the NAACP Crisis magazine, wrote, "I knew it to be true, but it was almost an impossibility for me to realize as a truth that men and women of my race were being mobbed, chased, dragged from streetcars, beaten, and killed within the shadow of the dome of the Capitol, at the very front door of the White House." After refusing to send in troops before, on the fifth day of unrest, President Woodrow Wilson finally stepped in and sent nearly 2,000 soldiers into the city to end the violence. But not even a week later, on July 27th, the nation's attention turned to Chicago. Unlike the preceding riot, the trigger to this melee was no rumor. There were several eyewitnesses to this truly tragic event. Picture this. On a beach at Lake Michigan, 17-year-old Eugene Williams took a ride on a homemade raft and drifted into the whites only section of the beach by accident. A white man began throwing stones at him, hit him in the head, sent him into the water, and he drowned. This caused an uproar. A few hours after Eugene's body was finally brought to the shore, a crowd of nearly 1,000 outraged witnesses assembled on the beach waiting for him. Black bystanders demanded that the man who threw the stones be arrested. For them, Eugene's death was the last straw. In his book, Occupied Territory, Policing Black Chicago from Red Summer to Black Power, historian Simon Balto explained that this was right in the middle of a 4-year reign of terror where white supremacists bombed 58 homes to keep Black people from pioneering. Pioneering is a term that describes Black American families in the early 20th century who moved into all-white neighborhoods. That day, at Lake Michigan, the police made no arrests. They took no action. And that's when the fighting began and exploded beyond the beachfront and into the city. White men rode into Chicago and shot up Black homes and Black businesses. White mobs formed and began beating Black people on the street and setting fire to Black homes. When local authorities failed to come to the aid of Black people, Black veterans stepped in, forming their own militias. One group even broke into a local armory to get weapons so that communities could adequately defend themselves as the violence raged on. Only heavy rain and the intervention of the Illinois National Guard were able to bring the week-long assault to a stop. By the end, 38 people had been killed, 23 of whom were Black. Nearly 1,000 Black homes had been burned down, and 500 people, again, mostly Black, suffered severe injuries. NAACP investigator Walter White stated later, "The Chicago riot taught me that there could be as much peril in a northern city when the mob is loose as in a southern town." Black self-defense units emerged out of necessity across the United States as riots surfaced. Multiple other major cities would report race riots in 1919 as well. Among these were Omaha, Nebraska, Elaine, Arkansas, and Charleston, South Carolina. During each of these, a disproportionate number of Black people were killed and injured. Some newspapers suggested that the uprisings and Black resistance to white violence was being caused by Soviet and socialist propaganda. But it didn't take propaganda for Black people to see what was happening all around them. A total of 3,436 people were lynched in the United States between 1889 and 1922. 3,038 of them were Black. An October editorial in the New York Times proclaimed, "Persistence of unpunished lynchings of Negroes fosters lawlessness among white men imbued with the mob spirit and creates a spirit of bitterness among Negroes. In such a state of public mind, a trivial incident can precipitate a riot." In 1918, Representative L.C. Dyer of Missouri introduced the Dyer Anti Lynching Bill, the first of 200 anti lynching bills to be introduced in the United States throughout the course of its history. But it is important to note that since 1918, no anti lynching legislation has ever been passed. And as of this filming, in 2021, still nothing. In 1939, jazz singer Billie Holiday performed what would become an iconic song written by Abel Meeropol that captured the terror of black lynchings. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. The Red Summer of 1919 shows us how much white Americans across the country pushed back against the prospect of black people beginning to intrude on their spaces and demand rights that white people thought only belonged to them. In addition to the implementation of Jim Crow laws that became codified and formalized over time, white mob violence sent the message to black people that they needed to stay in their place. But black people didn't just stay in their place. Despite the violence they faced from what must have seemed like every direction, black folks kept working, kept advocating, and kept pushing to live in the sort of world they knew that they deserved to live in. And no assault, no violence, or mob was going to stop that. As James Weldon Johnson once wrote, I will not allow one prejudiced person, or 1 million, or 100 million to blight my life. I will not let prejudice or any of its attendant humiliations and injustices bear me down to spiritual defeat. My inner life is mine, and I shall defend and maintain its integrity against all the powers of hell. Thanks for watching. I'll see you
Okay.
next time. Crash Course is made with the help of all these nice people, and our animation team is thoughtful.
Wow. Now I told you that was deep. That was a deep piece. Do you know it was so funny? The stuff that happened then, I've seen now, such as the insurrection on the Capitol, January the 6th. There was an insurrection on the Capitol back there in 1919, the summer of 1919. I mean, and it just reminded me of that mob mentality back then, and we saw it again. It reared its ugly head, and the words that they used back then, like what was that, pioneering? Yeah, they took pioneering and they meant to say now they call it integration. That stuff was done back in the 70s as well. And when we did mind our own business, and when we did stay to ourselves in our own communities to build our own communities, places such as Okeechobee, Florida, and in the Oklahoma bombing, they came into us or to our section and attacked us, and we were separate and minding our business. They got jealous because we were separate and thriving. It's like the jealousy and the fear. And I want to point out one more thing because I'm gonna let Katina loose because I know Katina got a lot about this. The call to arms is always a white woman. I don't care. All through history, you attack a white woman. You did that. They did it to Emmett Till. They did it in 1980. They did it all through. They did it to the Snow Riot. Always, you're attacking a white woman. That's a lie, and that gives them just cause to bear arms to come in and try to uh, destroy whatever's in this path. I'm going. I digress. Katina, you got to take it. I'm about to. Woo.
Okay. Well, I think it was very interesting. I think he said that in Chicago that there was no white woman involved. It was just that he had swam over and accidentally crossed on the white side and he was swimming in the river. And that precipitated these people to stone this guy, which precipitated, the whole riot. But like he did say, Black people fought back. We didn't just sit there and take it. And it's interesting that he talked about how long that after a while, after there's all of this fighting, then Woodrow Wilson, the president at the time, wants to step in and try to do something, intervene in some kind of way, which he should have done long ago. However, if Woodrow Wilson had not been such a racist, he may have done something. Because the one of the worst legacies, apart from his policies of Woodrow Wilson, is that Woodrow Wilson allowed. I don't know if you ever heard of, because this is another part that plays into the violence. Before the violence, and what gets people mad is a lot of other things. And some of it was about these men coming back from the war. A lot of it had to do with, Blacks migrating north because there were all of these new factories opening up. So they were moving north trying to get work. There was no work in the South. There was a lot of virulent racism in the South. And not only that, even Black people who worked in the South was oftentimes stuck in this tenant farm sharecropping relationship, and where they used to do all the work and get no money when it's time to pay people. That's a whole nother discussion. But what Woodrow Wilson did was in 1915, he allowed another racist by the name of D.W. Griffith to come into the White House and show a film that was called Birth of a Nation. And
Oh,
Birth of a Nation was created as like a propaganda tool in order to show America what this new post-world society and new industrial society will look like once we let all the Black people free and once we give these guys their rights. And so it's the most gross video you ever want to see. It just disrespects Blacks. It shows Black people you know, doing all kind of grotesque things like sitting in Congress, taking their shoes off, messing with their feet. I mean, it just gets, and it tries to show Black men attacking women, Black white women. And I mean, it is just the most absurd. Many of the characters are white people that's covered with Black face playing Black people. It's just absurd. But the president of the United States at the time, Woodrow Wilson, allowed him to come to the White House to show this film. And this was in the era when films were just turning into motion pictures. It was the beginning of the silent film era. So during this opening of the to celebrate the silent film era, these guys come to the White House, show this racist movie, and Woodrow Wilson famously says, "This is like writing history with lightning." And so, which is the most absurd thing, right? Because nothing in there is actually true, because you better believe that those Black men that did make it into Congress after slavery, during the Reconstruction period, comported themselves like the the best, because we never want to let white people see us being anything but at our best. So there was no way that they would go in to the White House, shucking and doing all of this ignorant stuff, all of these caricatures of blacks as whites like to envision them. So all of this was in 1915. So this is all brewing up to the 1919. It's like they giving the white people the sights they need to see, the sounds they need to hear, the smells they need in order to just go ballistic on black people for no real reason but the fact that they see them as an actual economic threat. I believe that that's the main reason behind it, because I think people can be much more rational when their stomachs are full and their basic needs are being met. But because we live in a society that you know just only a few can have anything, you know, it leaves the rest of us to fight each other, in my opinion.
Wow. Molly, do we have any comments from our viewers and listeners out there? I can't I'm
Yeah, you
sorry.
know Slicky Woo going off. Say, see, Whitey is a mother effer. Leave that. But before that, he was going in too. He was like, "Well, it's always great to know the truth about us as black peeps, but we are a war amongst ourselves as blacks. Let's remember that the whiteys still had the power because we give it to them. We kill each
Mhm.
other, and it's like we are working for them by killing each other. Think, my peeps." So, I mean, that's based. And then he said, "Hey, love."
Thank you. I'm choked up because I feel we had 40 acres in a mule and they took it from us. But
No,
we
no, 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 no. Unless you talk about when you was in Africa,
no no no
because I'm
Oakland
about to
Creek
say
down
those
there how they
guys
burnt the
never
people, took the
gave
property.
they never materialized on that deal. The 40 acres and the mules never actually happened, and that's terrible. Now
But what
some
I'm saying,
people,
we
hmm,
had our little piece of land and they
from
took it from
where?
whatever we had.
Well, the few people that actually were given some. I mean, I'm talking about when the Freedmen's Bureau literally started to try to give 40 acres in a mule. The white people got so mad so fast
Right.
that all of that I mean, but that was really no, it was only just a few families that may have gotten a little land. But then what we did was went out and started buying stuff. And that's the issue. When we started to buy stuff and then people start to burn your shit, I'm sorry, your stuff, then that is when you really want to get mad. You know what I'm saying? Because they really never gave us anything. And
Right.
when
No,
you
I'm
move
sorry.
up
Take
to
that
the
back.
time when
Dave.
people did establish, Tulsa, Oklahoma, the settlement in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There were settlements in Kansas, Nicodemus, Kansas, all of these places where blacks actually went to settle.
Yep.
Like you're saying, you get harassed by whites, but then sometimes you end up economically not able to sustain these things. And I think that is stems a lot from, black people just not really like DJ Slicky Woo Boo says, not really sticking together and being at war with each other, which, too, you could blame on white people because we literally was kind of socialized in this way during that time, is to fight amongst each other. And so after there was, physical emancipation, there, in my opinion, was a need for psychological emancipation. How do we now retrain ourselves to love ourselves? We came here loving ourselves, loving who we were as African people. And then for about 300 years, they have reverse taught us to hate ourselves. And now you need to reverse it back,
Mm.
which, takes time and effort, though. And I think it's an easy task because black people ain't that hard to love.
I know that's right. Some of them are. You got a couple of them, like
Some
DJ
of
Slick
them are.
Music. You just, it's a little hard, just little to
And you
love.
just love them anyway.
I just love him anyway because that's my brother. I love him anyway. Um, Oh, and I also wanted to say that the integration sometimes I just want to know why a lot of times I do understand why they're not teaching this in school and why they
Mhm.
don't want to talk about racism because they're scared now with our black youth, like with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that, that now that they're going to rise up in violence. Now that's what they're scared about. That's why they don't want the systemic racism being taught, but you need to know your history and how you got to this point. We was fed up time and time again before. It's like our younger generation now is not so much making the correlation with stuff that happened in the past, like 1919. Those people, those men, 360,000 of our black men were either enlisted on their own or they were drafted, went off to a war, came back and just wanted to be treated civil and wanted the country to love them. A country that has such a disdain for the black man. They wanted that respect. They wanted to be treated as citizens and not enslaved Africans. Is that right, Katina? Enslaved
I
Africans.
prefer that.
Okay, not enslaved, not enslaved Africans. They was like, okay, man, we went over here, we showed them what we could do, and that was also what sparked them to start fighting back. When they came back from the war, came back a new black man, came back a black man that said, "I'm not gonna let you hit me. I'm gonna hit you back now." And I'm like, the war was from 1814 to 1818, and all of this brings
19,
um yeah, I'm sorry,
14.
1914 and
Hmm.
1918.
Yes.
And then when 1990 came, all this was a broom for them. They came back from the war with learning they know how to fight. They went over there and fought the bad guys, which they found out that the bad guys are here in America. The bad guys is what sent us over into this other country, you know. But nonetheless, they came back. But this time, they came back ready to fight, ready to meet them, saying, "I'm going to die. If I'm going to die anyway, I'm going to die fighting and with my back against the wall." Meaning, I'm gonna meet you, front on. And that is that spirit. I don't know where that spirit came from. Maybe in the deep bowels of Africa. When they came back different. That's why there was so much uprising, and that's why white America, quote unquote, got really scared. Not only are they treading on us economically, now they know how to fight. They're not just gonna let me beat them up. I want to bring to remembrance. Everybody saw the Butler, right? You saw the Butler
No, I didn't.
with Forrest Whitaker.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm gonna explain to you. There was a scene in the Butler that was so degrading, just like Birth of a Nation,
Mm-hmm.
where Forrest Whitaker just graduated college, something like that. He got high hon- honors, high
Mm-hmm.
prestige, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was driving and he hit a pig. This man was all dressed up in his suit and everything, just graduated, diploma and everything. He hit a pig that was in the middle of the road with his car, right? This old white, poor, barefoot country boy coming up and saying, "Oh, you killed my hog, you gonna pay me for my hog, N-word," you know. And then he overcharged him for the pig. And the wife was like, "If we give them this money for this pig, we ain't gonna have enough to pay our rent." And the white boy was like, "Well, if you don't give us the money, you're gonna have more problems than the rent." That lynching law, I guess in the back of his mind, because in 2022, I think they just did something to try to get it off the book. But anyway, he in his suit just graduated, and this poor, uneducated, barefooted farmer still was calling him boy and nigga. And it was a young boy talking to him, talking to this grown man. And That just it's just like no matter how smart our black people get, the even the poorest racist uh, KKK member, the white supremacists, still think they're smarter than us on any given day. No matter, because that's that superiority. They think because they color trumps everything. And
That's
that
that's
and
how it works.
you said that's how it works. And
Hmm.
it's working to the day. To me, I still see it. It's like we may advance a little bit, but we're not that far removed from this kind of behavior and stuff. And my whole thing is, if our children don't know, don't let it happen again. But if they don't know, like it took me to become an adult to hear about 1919 because it wasn't learned in school or nothing like that. And it was just in search of because I had questions, you know, and I was just me continue from I always liked learning when I was a kid. When I was in school and stuff, I was
Hmm.
a nerd. I'm gonna say it. I was a nerd, but it just fascinated me our culture, our people, and I was like, we are so great in the essence that we came from. This can't be it for us, and it's not. And as I read and the horrible stories, and when I talked to my grandmother and their sisters and how because they were sharecroppers. My
Hmm.
grandmother's side of the family, they were
Hmm.
sharecroppers, while my
Hmm.
grandfather's side of the family was a little better and they owned property. And that was because my great grandfather was in World War II with some of my
Hmm.
great uncles.
Hmm.
And when they came home, military gave them what's that pension that they get from the military, and they were able to buy things and do things, and they were smart
Oh,
and they
pension. Okay.
and made the money work for them.
All right.
That's why
Hmm.
they was able to buy land, farms, and some houses and stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
But my grandmother's side of the family was poor sharecroppers.
Mm.
She would talk about how the man was so stingy when it came to the money that he would split a penny in half. He wouldn't give them a penny or give or take a penny. He
Yeah.
would rather split the penny in half. And and that coupled along with what you read in history, it's just like a big and it's like I want to help our people. I want to help our people see and understand that they're great and who they are. Because when I look at a lot of these younger people generation, they calling them the generation they're calling them demons now. um Man, all this senseless violence that you're doing to each other, to yourself, the way you're conducting yourself. And I think back, I'm like, were we ever that radical? Were we ever that wild? When you look at it, and I can only think about the education or the information that we did not have to pass on to our children, and what was not taught to me through my mother's and them generation. That they didn't have that. I don't know if they didn't have it or they didn't want to speak about it. And that systemic racism reminds me of them silencing our voice, or for us not to speak about what happened.
Well, I gotta say, I think that even our parents and our family members who aren't, educated in terms of the chronology of history and things of that nature, they have experiences that they do pass on to us that helps us to be able to understand that white people are gonna probably treat us bad, and or that you don't trust white people, perhaps not in all situations, of course. I remember that my uncle, once I went to go visit him and I was staying with them for a weekend, and he came out looking for me, and I was in a white girl's house playing, and I was just playing dolls and things of that nature, and I do remember the mother kept asking me, do I want some water? Do I want juice? And I was refusing because I just didn't want any. I wasn't thirsty. But when I got outside and my uncle, I heard somebody calling me. That's what happened. And I looked up and I said, oh, dang, that's my uncle calling me. So I went outside and the white people followed me out to the balcony and watched me outside and everything. And my uncle looked up and saw the white people. I still remember him seeing the white people and he smiled and stuff. And he waved at the white people and he mumbled under his breath when he let me go back though. I said, I'm just at my friend's house and I'm just playing dolls. And he smiled at the white people and said, okay, you have a good time. And he says under his breath, whatever you do, don't drink the water. And
Oh
I just
wow.
fell out. And that right there told me it was just that one sentence that said, okay, we don't trust them. I don't know exactly why, but it's something about these white folks. I don't think I ever drank out of white people's house, any white people after that time, because he just scared me. So, we can't be upset because people haven't, talked about a lot of things, especially not systemic racism. That's a big idea to try to grapple with. But I think our parents, through their life experiences, teach us that, we're black people, they're white people, and we start to notice things. White people have good stuff, black people inherently have bad stuff. And that would lead us to a place where we kind of internalize a sense of inferiority. Now, I don't think that's purposeful. I think that's just, a byproduct of understanding the situation that you're living in. Okay. And I think we have to purposefully try to understand that, okay, yes, that's true. White people have it all. White people have the power, but that's not right. That's not fair. And at some point, we decide to say, hey, we're going to halt this. We're going to try to change the way we think. We're going to try to change the way that we behave. We're going to try to, stop making white people more rich by spending all our money with them and bring our money into our own community, invest in our own communities. And when we fail, we just start again, because we're very unforgiving when it comes to other black people. But white people, we forgive. We almost forgive anybody except another black person. However, that's a product of them when they were our mentality as we were being built into a slave, as they were cultivating, this slave type of humanity in us. Because you had to break a person all the way down to their nothingness in order to be able to try to sustain a economic base such as slavery, in which people are going to do the work that you would have animals do, and now today we have machines to do.
Right. Let's
Hmm.
talk about Jim Crow law. Do you know? They say they talked about it a lot throughout the presentation. Can you
Hmm.
explain to the listeners, the viewers, of what is Jim Crow?
Well, Jim Crow was just a set of laws that was created to just essentially keep black people in their place. So those were the laws that said when you get on a train, you get to the back. You
Hmm.
can't drink out the water fountain. They were just stupid laws that white people put in place to create a social system that would allow them to all psychologically buy into the inferiority of blacks and the superiority of whites. Because you have to remember, all white people aren't rich. You have the majority of white people were poor and they had no possessions. So the only way to make them feel important is to put value on whiteness. Okay. And the value you put on whiteness, they were able to extend that to themselves, even poor people. That's why a poor person, only way that they can wield any power over a black person is to call the older black woman mammy, you see,
Mhm.
or talk down to them or say, boy, you better get that up, even though you just going to your college graduation. You see, it's only the social dynamics that can actually allow you to buy in, to create anything that could be resembled as reality. It's a psychological sense of superiority that's not
Mhm.
real. It's not based in anything real. And so the Jim Crow, that's another book you can, Jim Crow. Uh, um, you can read these things. And so those were just a set of laws that was put in place to slow our progress and to make us feel less than human as we traverse the social world, since they
Yeah.
didn't have the physical slavery at that time. And look, this is a book too that I love this. I bought this in my house back in the 90s. It's called, and it's just a big giant book that has a lot of historical facts in it that's easy to read. As a matter of fact, here is the whole thing on lynching. I don't know if you can see the map and everything. And so people can get these things and put them in your house, because if they take it off the internet, we'll be through. I got all my own books here just in case, they want to rewrite history. I can pull my book out and say, hey, guess what? That's a damn lie. I can pull out my Black Washington, that's a damn lie. And
We
just
got to
keep,
educate ourselves. And that's it. When we get the education and the knowledge, do we pass it on to our children? Because our children should know just what we know and even more. But our children, we don't want our children to experience the negativity of life that we experience. But we want our children to be have the knowledge. You want them to have the information that they need to be a better version of us. That's what we always want. That and how I got into this conversation, I wanted to bring this topic up, is me talking to my niece about us in our generation and them and theirs, because she always says, well, this is a different time. Yes, ma'am, it is a different time, but I keep seeing the same set of issues, even in a
exactly,
different time. She's right.
exactly.
It's a different time. And my son will always say, Mom, that was then, this is now. Yes, that was then and this is now. But you still having them same issues. Why do you think you guys were marching and saying Black Lives Matters? Because if things was different, you wouldn't have to tell nobody that your life mattered. They will automatically know. And that was like part of the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter and all of that. Black lives have always mattered, right?
Exactly, exactly. But and like Slicky says, we're engaging in this internal warfare, and that is a problem. And if you don't respect yourself, how can you expect other people to respect you? So once Black people start respecting themselves, trust and believe, the white people will say, "Oh my God." Then they'll come after you with both barrels. But then we'll be ready for them, because now we are more of a cohesive group, because we trust each other and we love each other. So I'm like, today is the best day to get started loving a Black person,
That's right.
any random Black person you see.
Tell somebody you love them. I mean, that's what the Joe Claire got a challenge out, that take 30 or 60 seconds to tell another person,
Well, we want to tell
that you
Black
love
people,
them.
be very intentional about it. Seriously, because they
Right.
are intentional about breaking you down. You have to be intentional about building us up.
That's right. Because we
Okay.
feel because we feel that we don't that nobody love us. We feel that our self worth is diminished. We feel like a tarnished chain. You the gold. You twinkle and glisten all the time. But they feel like that we're less than. I used to tell my folks around me, they knew I always call myself a diamond. I said because only a diamond can cut a diamond. I used to say I don't care if I fall in a pile of poop. I am still a diamond. I'm just a diamond that might have fell in some shit, but I'm still a diamond. When you get up and you brush me off and you clean me up, I am still a diamond. A diamond is a diamond. Even if the
Mhm.
diamond do fall in the pile of crap, guess what? It's still a diamond. It just got some crap on them. And that's what you are. You are a diamond. You shine. You twinkle and glisten. Don't let nobody take your pride from you. Don't let nobody diminish your light like that, you know? And that's what all of that slavery is. It's a mental thing. That's why mental health is so important. If you got a person's mind, you all married, you got the body. I don't care if they got a body uh that built like the rock. If that mind ain't there, you don't have nothing, because it's the mind that controls our body, not our body, controlling the mind. I wish it was sometimes like that,
I
but
know, right?
it starts here. Everything starts up here. Sickness, wellness, health, wealth. Everything starts in the mind. What's that saying? As a man thinketh, so he is, or whatever.
Yeah, that's what it says.
You can be whatever you
Yeah.
want to be. You are that. Mold yourself, mold your life. But if we're never taught how valuable we are, we're going to believe that old rhetoric. Oh, you just the this, or you just the that. You know, and not only that, with color, women had to go through that with the suffrage too. That's a different show. The people probably say, "What the hell is the suffrage?" Google it. Look it up, people. I'm just trying to, educate my
I mean,
people.
but there's no, I don't ever try to equate those two, because the white women who were fighting for suffrage, they were just fighting for the right to vote, maybe the right to inherit this or that, but they weren't dehumanized like black people were. And so, and they actually benefited a great deal, because many of the luxuries of society they actually got because of their attachment to white men. So I always try to push back when people try to say, "Oh, they were," and this is like, hey, no one suffered like black people suffered, and and
And, and black
this is
women,
a
because we the lowest on the totem
well,
pole.
absolutely, because when women were given the right to vote, black women weren't given the right to vote.
Nope.
We wasn't voting until the 60s with everybody else. So, you know. Yeah, that's a whole different movement. I know there's many white black women who like to, bring themselves into that fold. I'm just not one of them. I don't have a problem with that, but I just know that those white women were almost as racist as their husbands.
Yes,
But
they were. Yes.
so yeah, I'm like,
Almost. They were. You know, boy, I tell you, this white lady told me, and this is in the year of 2020, 2021. She told me, because I had to lay her out when we were talking about the equality, the 40 acres and mule thing, and she said, they were talking about reparations with the
mm,
government, with the thing with
mm,
Biden. She
mm,
said, well, black people already got their reparations. She said
mm.
they have welfare.
Oh,
And I looked at her. I said, "Bitch, you do
oh,
too." I'm like,
oh.
"Is you crazy?"
Oh,
I
yeah,
said,
you
"And the
tell her I
more."
want mine in a lump sum. I don't want mine in little pieces every
But
month,
she was
uh,
totally
and
wrong and
broken down into
misspoken.
food stamps and Medicaid. I just send me a whole lump sum of
She was
cash if
totally
that's
wrong.
reparations. Oh, she's
She said
absolutely
black
wrong.
people got
She
reparations.
was
No, all
trying to
people
be
got.
mean.
All people got welfare, not just one color. All people
Mhm,
got welfare. The
mhm.
immigrants that's
Well, at
coming
least
over here,
access to
them,
it
you
anyway.
know,
You
because
can
a
go
lot
fill
of
out an
black people they won't
application.
give it to us, make you jump through all these hoops and stuff. Now she's talking about welfare, but you sitting up there on it for your brother because he's a special need. But believe you me, you make sure he got his check, he got his medicine, he got everything he need. And I was like, "Ain't you nothing? How dare you?"
Mhm. You should ask her, how does she explain their welfare allotments?
Look,
Is that a reparation as
I,
well?
I was too busy calling her so many
I'm
Karens.
sure, I'm sure, girl.
And
Take
she
a
was like,
lot
I
to
don't
just
understand why you're getting so upset.
oh.
All I asked you was a simple question, and Reese, you're too violent. You get upset a lot. You just so,
And let me just, and that's one of the things too that silence black people is white people's reaction to them when they say if speak about anything that's historical about black people. Oftentimes you get a pushback, and so over the years I think some people have just said, let's not talk about black stuff. And anytime you even try to bring up the fact that something has only happened because this person is black, they'll try to say, oh, you're playing the race card. So they come up with these terms
Mhm.
to, use these code words that will just silence you immediately. And over time, those become very effective, so much so that we don't even know it's happening. You just buy into these things psychologically because you see that people who don't talk about race, they can be successful. People who do talk about race, they oftentimes are not successful. So it's just this elementary ideas that gets, transmuted into society through our actions and behaviors, repetitive actions and behaviors that, brings us to a place where, you know, Black history is put off to the side. It's looked at not only Black history, but history, all alternative histories of different ethnic groups are not really intentionally taught in the classrooms. But that doesn't, and that's, I'm just saying from the grade level, because when you go to college, you have a wide range of Black courses. I mean, I taught at a Black college where Black students literally, don't be shocked, they said to me, why do we always got to learn about Black stuff at this school?
Black college. Want to know why
Okay,
you gotta learn about
thank
black
you.
stuff?
And these are Black students. Okay, so it's not just people who feel they're not getting it. You got a segment of population out here for like they're getting too much.
What it is,
And
they don't
that's
care.
crazy.
The younger ones, like I said, like my niece and them, they was like, "Oh, that's a different time. It's not then, it's not now. Racism don't exist." That they're saying that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever you say. But Katina, we gonna have to bring you back at
All right.
another time. This has
Okay,
been an
girl.
awesome show. But before we go, Katina, because you know me
Yes.
since the seventh grade, can you tell my brother DJ Slicky Woo Boo that I was not a dunce bat?
You was not a what?
A dunce bat.
What
That
does
I was
that
an
mean?
astute, a dummy.
Oh, yeah, she was a very smart student, and sometimes we used to have a class that we went to, it was
Oh
actually
wow.
geography, and, hardly no one did their work but her, and so sometimes she would do her work and put her head down on the desk, and we would sneak her paper and take, some of the answers off of it. That was in geography. I definitely remember that one.
Mr. Freeberg class.
Mr. Freeberg with
I
the big
love this
stomach.
class.
Yes.
And I was
And
the
you
only one
actually
that
paid
was good.
attention. She finished the work first. And we used to be like, after we finished playing in the class and talking and pissing off the teacher, we'd be like, get her paper because she over there taking a nap. And after she finished her work. So, no,
I
she
would have
was
gave
very
them the
astute.
answers. They didn't have to keep the paper. That I
Well,
just
hey, we didn't want to wake you up. It's,
Mr. Freeberg collected the papers. Mine's already be turned in. I'm like, how did they turn? I didn't turn my paper.
yeah, we turned in all the papers. Don't worry. We turned yours in. You don't have to worry. So yes, I will vouch for that. You was definitely a good student and a good friend.
Thank
And
you.
yeah,
Thank
we used to
you.
talk all the time after school and stuff. She used to like to play on people's phone, y'all. So if somebody is playing on y'all phone, it's probably her because she would love to call people randomly on the phone. She liked to call you up and say, "Let's call people on the three-way."
Yeah, or pranking somebody. That was the joke.
Yeah, yeah,
That was the jokester part
with
of me.
corny jokes, absolutely.
But you used to tell some the best ones, the ones that I still remember to this day. That was like, oh wow, it's 40 years, well, 35 years of history right there.
I tell you.
So we love
Well,
you, and I would love
well,
for you to
thank you for
come
having
back
me.
to co-pilot with me on some other issue because everything is always a race, issue. That's what my sons say. I'm accused of being a conspiracist and a racist, but I'm not. I'm just proud and I love my people. And there always is something behind something. You know, you
Yeah, we
some
call it
people can
critical
pass at the
thinking
age of
in
6.
academia. We call it critical thinking. We try to
Thank
take
you.
away
Thank
from that
you.
conspiracy theory, and we call conspiracy theorists critical thinkers.
That's all it is. If people use critical thinking more than not, they wouldn't be in a lot of predicaments that they find themselves in. And I tell my son that there's something the skeptic. Look, you got to be skeptical about everything. You know, even with religion, like I'd be telling him and everything. But that's going to be another show topic. Um, do you have anything that you want to say for the people, Katina, before we out? This was a great show. I enjoyed it.
I really am glad to have been here, and I hope I left some good information, valid information, accurate information, and enjoy, like I say, discussing these topics. And whenever you want to, discuss something else, just let me know, and I will surely come back if I'm, home and available.
Yes,
And
yes.
people can ask questions if they want, and we might be able to answer some. I have a lot of books around me just in case I needed to check some of my facts, and so if I can provide an accurate answer and enlighten people, I would definitely like to do that, and encourage all parents to be a part of your school boards, be a part of the PTA at your school. That's power. It's there are so many different ways to harness power and use it to your advantage, you
Mhm.
know. And I think that, you could be a great service to your children if you are more active in the school. And it'll take a lot off of you as a parent because you're paying for this people to teach your children. Teach those children what you want them to be taught, and and get your money's worth. And don't be afraid to push back on the system. That's what I think people should do.
I agree. I concur. My son said that's the most valuable that's the most valuable thing is knowledge, because the people with the knowledge control stuff. You know, is that knowledge.
Well, at
So
least if you got some knowledge, you can figure your way out of a lot of things.
yeah, that touche, touche, my
Okay.
sister, touche. So if nobody don't know about this, it's the Joe Claire challenge to take the 30 to 67 to enlighten somebody's day or tell somebody that you love them. We always talking about we want to be the change. It's time for us to be the change that we want to see. And how do we go about redirecting our youth? We got to figure that out. We got this generation. We got to figure it out. I tell you, because every time I turn on the news, somebody is getting gunned down. I feel like even more so now because everybody. I don't know if it's the pandemic. I don't know if it's because they was locked up and now they're out. Everybody acting all crazy, but this has been a really or the politicians or taking the lead from our government. I cannot. I really cannot say at this point. But I know that we need to start doing something to redirect our children back
Exactly.
into the
Because if you don't, they got a place for your children.
one or two
Okay.
places, Jill and
Rent
Billy.
free. Look, rent free till you get out, and then they try to charge you to get your way out. So it's like you don't. If you leave an empty, what we call it, leave a vacuum, somebody gonna fill it. And if there's a vacuum in your children's life in terms of how you are rearing them and what are you teaching them, those guys have something. They've decided that I don't know if you've heard of the pipeline to prison. So they have predicted that our children, starting with looking at their third grade reading and math scores, that the ones who are doing bad, you can almost predict that they will be in prison. Pipeline to prison talks about how they predict elementary school children
Mm, mm, mm,
path to prison.
mm,
And so they're always thinking, they're always working,
plotting
and
against us. That's the agenda. That's part of that
Well,
hidden agenda.
it ain't hidden at all because you don't have to hide it. I think, Carter G. Woodson said, if you teach a man what to think and how to think, you will never have to worry about they'll do.
Mm, mm, mm.
That's in the
Well,
Miseducation of the Negro.
Miseducation, or like
Of
the
the Negro by Carter
Miseducation of
G. Woodson.
Tom. That's another
Mhm.
good book too. I don't know who wrote it, but it's called The Miseducation of Uncle Tom. That's another
Oh,
good book.
that's funny. I'll write that
Tom,
down.
Miseducation of Tom. Yes.
Okay.
Woo! So Casina's
All
coming
right,
back.
girl.
I'm gonna try to get her to be
Yes.
a regular on the show. She may not can't do it every day, but every day that she can, we're gonna try to get her to be a regular, our local historian and sociologist to give some insight into why we be doing that stuff. Why do
That's
John
what I
be
do.
snapping on his mama like that? Why he in
I
the
can
grocery
help.
store having the same
I got some ideas. Look, I got an idea on everything.
Molly, do you have anything to say? Do we got any more comments?
Nah, nah. Yeah, I had a great show though.
Thank you, Molly. So peace, and we are out.
All right.
Next
See y'all
time.
later. Take care, Molly. Have a good
All right, you
weekend.
too.
Thank
All
See
right.
you.
y'all out
Take
there.
care,
Well, we'll
Molly.
still be in the lobby, Katina, once we
We
end the
still be,
show.
so you don't have to click off. We still
Oh,
be in the
okay.
lobby. So
Okie
All
dokie.
right.